Good evening. My name is Shailesh Shirali. On behalf of the KFI, I welcome you to this event. I'd like to say a few words about the event before we get going. And before anything else, may I request you all to switch off your cell phones or to put them on silent mode. You can give a few seconds for that. Please confirm that you've been able to do that. As I'm sure all of you know, during his lifetime, Krishnamurti would give talks regularly here in this campus. And wherever he gave talks, there would also be gatherings, vast numbers of people coming together to listen to him and to also have discussions with him. After his passing away in 1986, an attempt was made to continue some of the activities that used to go on during his lifetime. For example, towards the end of his life, there used to be seminars held out here where groups of scientists would come and meet together and discuss some issues. And after 1986, almost immediately, similar attempts were made. Naturally, without the presence of Krishnamurti, that was a big difference, but they were still very interesting events. Various formats were tried, including panel discussions, seminars, and so on. And after many iterations, the present format that is followed now is that of individuals coming and talking to an audience. The talk lasts for about 45 minutes. And after that, the speaker takes questions from the audience for another 40-45 minutes. So it's an event lasting about an hour and a half. And over the past few years, we've had speakers from the fields of science, of environmental activism, speakers from the performing arts, speakers from the fields of religious inquiry, and so on. A wide variety of speakers have come and shared their thoughts and have spoken about something of concern. And I think it's very important that we continue this activity because we are living in times which are very challenging, extremely challenging from a variety of points of view, not only in terms of environmental breakdown and so on, which is very visibly happening around us, but also the social environment everywhere is under threat. There is tremendous play of authority, of power, of tradition, and all the difficulties that we see around us. So it's important that we create a kind of conversation about these things, a living conversation in which we, with honesty and integrity, address some of these difficulties. So I'm very happy to introduce and welcome our speaker for this evening, Professor Avijit Pathak, who has written on issues related to education and social themes for many, many years now. He has been associated with the Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU in New Delhi, for many decades. He is a sociologist and a writer. He has written extensively on issues related to society, culture, and education. If you look through the pages of any online store like Flipkart or Amazon, you'll find a large number of books in his name, books that are all tremendously popular. Professor Pathak himself looks at himself as a wandering scholar and teacher, finding inspiration in teachers and thinkers from a wide range, ranging from Krishnamurti and Tagore to Thich Nhat Hanh. He sees education as a way of life and finds the image of a wanderer exploring a pathless land of knowledge most appealing. He has had a teaching career spanning 3 decades in JNU and is fondly remembered with great warmth by his earlier students, some of whom have written about him. In his talk this evening, Professor Pathak plans to explore the place of Krishnamurti's vision of education in the hyper-competitive world of current times. He will take up questions such as the following. Is it possible to promote cooperation and empathy against a backdrop of intense societal pressure? Is it possible to free ourselves of labels? Can we create classrooms that foster critical thinking alongside an openness to new perspectives and lifelong learning? And can we work towards education that frees and emancipates rather than merely trains? As part of his talk, Professor Pathak hopes to share stories with the audience and to ask questions of all of us. So I'd like to welcome him on behalf of all of us. Please.
Okay, Namaskar. Thank you very much, dear friends and colleagues. Growing up in Bengal as a child, we grew up with a beautiful song composed and written by Rabindranath Tagore. And that song is about a sense of gratitude. And Tagore writes in that song that I'm grateful. I have found myself in this vast universe amid trees, mountains, forests, rivers, stars, planets. And what a sense of gratitude and joy. And I tend to believe that life is incomplete without that sense of gratitude. It is pride that destroys life. Life begins and life acquires a meaning with relationships, with a sense of gratitude. So as I find myself right now here in this lawn, looking at this building, the room where Jiddu Krishnamurti used to stay, and see all of you, the sincere students of Jiddu Krishnamurti, what else can I do except articulating my sense of gratitude? I am grateful to Shailesh, grateful to Meenakshi, and other colleagues from the Krishnamurti Foundation who have given me this opportunity to come here and share some of my ideas, as Shailesh has said, the tales of a journey, an unfinished journey, ongoing journey with you. So I am indeed very grateful. I thank all of you once again. To begin with, just a minute about myself. I am a teacher, and I feel that a teacher is a student. So I see myself as a teacher-student or student-teacher. And when you see yourself like that, then you are essentially a seeker, a wanderer. You are constantly questioning, examining, inquiring, evolving. You are not contented with any fixed certainty and solutions. We are moving, constantly exploring. So it is this journey of being a wanderer, being a teacher-student, being a wanderer. Now also, as a student and teacher of social sciences over the years, I allowed myself, with the elasticity of consciousness, to expand my horizon. Those who think in terms of tight boxes might be surprised if I tell that in my mental landscape, Gandhi and Marx play together. In my mental landscape, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Tagore, and Hermann Hesse all become my intellectual and spiritual companions in the process of making sense of the world, culture, human psychology, human longing. So in that journey, with that elasticity of consciousness, that Jiddu Krishnamurti also became a very important part of that, spectrum of ideas and thinkers that began to shape me, shape my thinking, shape my ways of seeing the world. I was not lucky to be a student of any of the Krishnamurti Foundation schools. And despite being taught in a university which is often condemned as a left-centric radical university, I was very lucky and fortunate to see Jiddu Krishnamurti when I was a university student in the early 1980s in New Delhi's Constitution Club lawn. So I could listen to his 2 talks. And that was a great experience. So the journey began. And I began to read his books, his writings. And those books I would collect from the book fair, from the bookshop, from anywhere one could get those books. And these days, thanks to YouTube videos, almost every day I listen to one talk or other of Jiddu Krishnamurti. So that's the way, with this elasticity of consciousness, this journey began. I must confess that there are moments, and most of the time I have failed, and I have failed miserably in internalizing, in realizing Krishnamurti's deep thoughts and reflections. Well, academically I understand, intellectually I understand. If you ask me to give an intellectual lecture on his thought, I could do that, but I doubt myself whether I have really internalized it, whether it flows through my being, whether I am with it, or it is just a cognitive, intellectual, academic understanding. I ask myself this question. I'll just give a simple illustration. Right now, I am alive in this vibrant lawn. I am active, I am vibrant, I am alive. I am seeing you, feeling joy and experiencing great excitement in this process of communication. But there is also a fear. Tomorrow I might die. The next moment I might die. There might be a road accident, I might die. Suddenly doctors might detect that there is a serious disease inflicting my physical body, I might die. So there is a fear. There is a fear of death. Now I cannot skip that fear, the fear of death. Now then I listen to Krishnamurti. I begin to read Krishnamurti. And then Krishnamurti want to make me realize that, see, why is this fear? Because I do not know the art of ending. I do not know the art of living here right now without any possession, without any sense of holding, and just ending it at that moment. There is a beauty in ending. Intellectually, I understand this marvelous thought, but how difficult it is for me to realize it, to grasp it, to internalize it. I understand that Krishnamurti, when he says that fear is in thought, fear is in time. So I am afraid of tomorrow, because today I am not ending, I am holding it, and I am accumulating. It is my me, my car, my fame, my name, my wealth, my children, my property. And as Krishnamurti would say, what I am afraid of is essentially that me will disappear, that me, the me that has accumulated wealth, fame, property, and that me will wither away, will disappear, and I am afraid. So it is in thought, it is in time. I understand it perfectly intellectually. But I also know Krishnamurti is not a trigonometric equation. Krishnamurti is not a mathematical formula. It has to go inside. It has to be deeply realized and internalized. So I ask myself, do I really understand it, internalize it, or is it my only an intellectual knowledge of it and feeling very good about it? But when actually it comes, I'm terribly fearful. I'm terribly afraid. Now, that question I want to keep alive. I do not want to negate that question. I want to keep it alive. Likewise, our intellectual self, a self nurtured by Francis Bacon and René Descartes, often based on dualism, the division, conflict, man and nature, body and mind, Now, so can the observer dissolve in the process of observing? Now a question Krishnamurti keeps asking again and again, can the observer be dissolved in the process of observing? Now, this is a very important question. But at the same time, I know that how difficult it is to deeply take it, to internalize it. Quite often, we are so used to dualities, the divisions. And this division and the duality as the root of conflict. and the root of division. So the point that I'm trying to argue, that despite these failings, despite these failures, Krishnamurti still remains irresistible to me, and I cannot escape him. So I come back to him time and again, come back to him time and again, even though there are moments I fail and fail miserably in internalizing it, going beyond mere academic and intellectual understanding of Krishnamurti. So with that I would begin. But in order to, in this limited time, in 30 to 35 minutes, to bring some order and coherence to my talk, I wish to raise 3 issues. And while raising these 3 issues, I will try to work with Jiddu Krishnamurti. The first issue, of course, as a teacher, and many of you who are concerned with education, and Shailesh, Meenakshi, and many of you have given their life reflecting on education and meditating on Krishnamurti's idea of education, the kind of questions that Jiddu Krishnamurti raised. So I feel very humble, and just to begin with, I wish to bring some issues relating to the state of education, and then the 2 other interrelated issues I'll bring. So we live today, and I think all of you would agree with me, in a hyper-competitive age of social Darwinism, survival of the fittest. And in that hyper-competitive age of social Darwinism, also characterized by reckless consumerism, consumption. What the philosopher Erich Fromm used to say, having mode of existence. I am what I possess, I am what I have. I am my car, I am my property, I am my salary package. So I confuse myself, I equate myself with certain measurable index of having. Now we live under those circumstances. And in all these newspapers and the glossy magazines, we see the huge ads of educational institutions selling the mythologies of placements and salary packages. 4 years B.Ed in computer engineering from this institution, 50 lakh per annum. And after the board exam, parents and students engage in the marketing from the supermarket of these educational institutions and the placement and the salary packages. We also know about the quota factory. On an average, every month, 2 to 3 suicides. The notorious town in Rajasthan known for the entire coaching centers. So rote learning, colonization of learning space by instrumental coaching centers, the quantification of success in terms of 99% in the board examinations, and obsessive preoccupation with select careers in medicine, engineering, management, and commerce, and the disease of ranking of the institutions and the comparison and the competitiveness. That sickness surrounds us. Now as a student, as a teacher, I feel that even though this sickness is severe, you and I, who are concerned about education, ought to resist, ought to fight, ought to create a new sensitivity to education. And in that quest, of course, Rabindranath Tagore became a great pillar and companion, particularly his plea for aesthetically enriched education, which seeks to see beyond the duality and seeks to unite man and nature, science and poetry, aesthetics and reasoning, creating a very holistic, aesthetically enriched learning and education. I was also shaped and influenced by the Brazilian educationist Paulo Freire, particularly his idea of critical pedagogy, that student is not an empty vessel, and the task of a teacher is to ignite the possibility in the student and the work together to problematize the taken for granted world and strive for the philosophy of praxis of emancipation and liberation from all sorts of domination. So be it Tagore, be it Paulo Freire, and also Jiddu Krishnamurti. Now all these three became my intellectual companions, philosophic companions, sources of inspiration in articulating, in thinking of, or in trying to implement a new praxis of education, which is beyond the sickness that you and I are witnessing today. And when particularly I think of Krishnamurti, now all of you who have been working on Krishnamurti, for you it's a repetition, but let me just add, feel the gravity of the questions Krishnamurti was raising while reflecting on education, communicating with young children, teachers, parents. Say a question like this and just feel the gravity of the question. Did you watch sunset in the valley? Did you listen to the song of the bird? Did you look at the leaf falling from the tree, its dance, its extraordinary beauty? Do you see the color, its beauty? Are you sensitive to everything? Do you observe things around you? Now see these questions. Young students who are confined to the tiny cells of the quota factory and their physics and mathematics gurus would never bother to ask these questions. Now Krishnamurti raised these questions, and many of us as parents, only concerned with the select career options for our children, would not bother to ask these questions. But what a gravity in those questions. Now these questions are not about daydreaming, watching sunset, listening to the bird, seeing the beauty of the nature. This is about sensitivity to life. This is about awakened intelligence. This is about mindfulness. And this is about empathy and ethic of care. Now see the beauty and the gravity of these questions and where we have taken our mainstream education there. We are only creating products to be fitted into the gigantic techno-corporate market with appropriate placements and salary packages, where the sensitivity that Krishnamurti was talking about hardly bothers many of our educationist students. But this is such an important issue that you and I ought to reflect on and ought to bring in our schools, in our classrooms, in our engagement with children, teachers, with ourselves. Likewise, just think of another important question about order, freedom, and discipline. Every teacher bothers about this question, order, freedom, and discipline. Now, in one of his address, Krishnamurti said it so beautifully. See how people in the army are trained. That entire process of drilling, they are asked to follow mechanically, left, left, right, right. Left can never be right, right can never be left. There is no ambiguity. There is signal and there is a mechanical following the order. And when we call it discipline, day after day, it creates a dull mind. It destroys human intelligence. It destroys creativity and sensitivity. But discipline is about learning. Discipline is about awakened intelligence. Discipline is not about mechanized surveillance based on fear. Now it is this discipline, where is said beautifully, that discipline, order, and freedom, that this freedom is not irresponsible. This freedom is based on understanding, watchfulness, sensitivity, ethic of care, observation, mindfulness. And this discipline leads to, this freedom leads to order, a beautiful order, not the kind of order that we could see in the army parade. That is dull, that is mechanical, that is uniform. It causes regimentation. It creates a tight, docile body. It kills human sensibilities and the freedom and the spirit. So we need a new kind of discipline and the order and the sense of freedom. Now, what do we want our children to be? Do we want them to be perpetually observed by the continually developed technologies of surveillance and to get them transformed into docile bodies and docile minds? Or do we want them to be blooming flowers with a sense of watchfulness and the learning, and out of that awakened intelligence emerging a beautiful sense of order, symmetry, creativity, relationships. Now this, I think, is a very, very important issue Krishnamurti repeatedly made us rethink, all of us who are concerned about education. And third, I think, again and again in his talk and reminder, particularly with children, with teachers, the disease of comparison, ranking. The comparison. Imagine the society we are living in. All those after the 10 exam in the 11 opt for the science stream. Isn't it surprising that most of those who opt for the science stream today want to be computer engineers? It cannot happen. It should not happen. Same tree, two leaves are different with their unique shapes, with their uniqueness. It is so real, but we are creating such a denaturalized learning and educational milieu, uniformity of aspirations. So if I do not become a computer engineer, so I love music, I am fond of music, but my parents, my teachers repeatedly warned me that you cannot earn your bread and butter with music. So you have to be like the first boy of your class who is sure to crack the IITG examination. So I want to become like him. And that comparison, that ceaseless ranking, leads to psychic and symbolic violence, perpetuated every day in coaching centers, in classrooms, in our families, in our neighborhoods. And here his sensitivity, that ranking, that comparison, and if I quote him correctly, he would say that the moment I compare myself with others, then that other becomes more important than my own uniqueness, my own flowering, my own aptitude, my own talent, my own skills, that other becomes important. And out of that comparison emerges the most destructive impulses, envy, fear, and jealousy. And that is what this learning machine is creating all around us. So when we strive for a liberating kind of education, so in my walk with Tagore and Paulo Freire, Krishnamurti became another powerful companion. And I think that we all ought to, if we wish to evolve a new art of education and the pedagogy, we have to take the kind of questions Krishnamurti raised very seriously. The kind of literature that I have read about Krishnamurti Foundation schools, Meenakshi herself has written 2 books, Life at School and Education for Peace, and many other scholarly writings on the foundation schools. I tend to believe, after reading that, you are trying to nurture a beautiful flower in an environment which is otherwise full of desert, where only the competitiveness, reckless success, envy, jealousy, those prevail. Under those circumstances, your pedagogic experiment, your engagement with children, the sensitivity of teachers, you are trying to create a new possibility. And that's a lamp. That's a lamp. And that lamp may not be powerful to enlighten the larger, darker world. But the beauty of a single lamp is there. That lamp illumines other consciousness. And that's why a question that I often ask myself, what is possible in Rishi Valley School? Now, is it possible to take that experimentation in those schools where most of the children in Indian society study? say municipality school in Delhi or Bombay, a government school, a Kendriya Vidyalaya in Bangalore, or for example, even a fancy international school in the posh locality of Gurugram and Noida in Delhi. Now, is it possible to take that experimentation? Or is it that that flame is destined to be confined to the limited circuit, limited circle? I wish to raise this question alive, keep this question alive. And I wish to pose this question before this very sincere audience. I do not want to deny these questions, and I have no immediate answer to these questions. But so long as Krishnamurti would be saying, keep the spirit of inquiry alive. We are inquiring. We are inquiring. He was fond of saying together, we are inquiring together, So that is what I think, one of the things that I would like to share with you. With this, let me come to the second issue, interrelated issue, that also bothers me as a citizen, as a teacher, as a student. It might sound somewhat political, but it's not political in the sense the political parties talk about politics. It is political in the sense is that, as I'm saying, that an extraordinarily sensitive seeker, wanderer like Jiddu Krishnamurti, this evening, we cannot converse with him in a state of cultural, social abstraction and the void. We are also historically embedded beings, living in certain time and space. And as a result, the India that we are seeing today, witnessing today, where identities are becoming increasingly parochial, hyper-nationalist stimulations and sensations are creating a kind of madness and exclusiveness based on anger, hatred, division, and conflict. So we are living under those circumstances. Parochial religious identities, hyper-nationalist stimulation, sensations, the division and the conflict all around us. Now, how do we invoke Krishnamurti, refer to Krishnamurti, talk about Krishnamurti under those circumstances? Imagine the division that this politics has created today based on hyper-nationalist stimulations and sensations. I am a Hindu, you are a Christian. I am a Sikh, you are a Muslim. I am a Jew, you are a Palestinian. I am an Arab, you are an American. Now this division, this thought, and our identities based on that, politics centered on that. Now, as Krishnamurti was fond of saying, speeches after speeches in his writing, that it is thought based on memories. It is thought. That is the problem. That creates the division. Thought is divisive. Thought creates the division. And when I say that I am an Indian, I am a Hindu, I am a Muslim, it is this thought that is speaking through my mouth. And it has created this division, and that thought has emerged out of a terrible process of indoctrination and conditioning. Right from my childhood, you and I have been conditioned to believe in certain God, in certain set of rituals, certain set of practices. And we see it that it is the substance of our existence. And it is this conditioning, it is this thought that has created this division. As he would say, that the thought says, I am an Arab, I am a Muslim, I am a Hindu, I am a Sikh, I am a Christian. Now, is it possible to see beyond that thought? Now, I often ask myself these questions. At this intense moment of communal polarization, division, and conflict, I just happened to see a man who distinctively looks like a Muslim with certain cultural marker and symbols, do I see him just as a person here and now with awakened intelligence, without any thought that he is a Muslim, without any memory, based on past experiences and thought? Or is it that the moment I see him, my thought dictates me and I begin to recall the trauma of partition, the story of certain communal division, communal conflict, the hatred? Oh, my grandfather was killed during that riot. And then I begin to see him as an abstraction, as a category, as a product of thought, not just as an awakened intelligence, as a being living here and there, here, right now. But it is my thought that divides, that causes division. Can I overcome thought? Can I overcome thought? See beyond thought. Now, is it possible to decondition our minds in the age of extremism, in the age of polarization and violence? I think that Krishnamurti troubles us. Krishnamurti would like us to ask this question again and again. Danger to indoctrination, danger to thought that divides, and the danger to division, and as a result, the quest for deconditioning, unlearning, reconditioning and unlearning. And I think that is where Krishnamurti would constantly bother us. And it is here at this moment, it is so important, as I feel, to recall him and to think about the damage that this thought has created and this division it has created. And that deconditioning is possibly when you and I, and particularly all of you who are teaching, who are in the realm of education, that how we engage with young learners, engage with ourselves. Now, can we decondition our minds? Can we create an environment in which our children begin to see the world beyond nation, religion, caste? Can they begin to see the world? It's an important question that Krishnamurti bothers us, the way almost similarly at the time of World War and the rise of fascism, in his last convocation speech, which is called Crisis in Civilization, Rabindranath Tagore asked a similar question, that how it destroys the minds, how it creates a kind of violence. So what kind of sensibilities of education and sensitivity are required in this age? And I'll just end with my third point, that is, which is also you and I see every day. Watch television channel, open YouTube, you see it every day. It is instant salvation in the age of instantaneity. We are all consumers today. The market, this alliance of neoliberalism and religious nationalism that has transformed all of us into certain kind of consumers or the followers. And particularly in this age of instantaneity, everything has to be very instant and very quick and very ready-made. So even there is a mushrooming growth of what could be regarded as spiritual industry in the country. The industry that sells product like this, how to detox your mind in 2 minutes in early morning. It doesn't matter. The entire day I am engaged in a toxic environment. The entire day I engage myself in an act of violence. But early morning, I could certainly give 2 minutes. I could detox my mind. 3 important steps for mindfulness. Now these capsules, these packages are all around us. So I can consume a cup of Starbucks coffee instantly. So I can consume this spiritual product in 2 minutes. Now there are many traditionalists. For them, the religion is essentially based on a fixed holy book, be it the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the New Testament, going to the temple, going to the mosque, going to the church. And there are a lot of post-modern consumers, fancy, English-speaking, sophisticated in our time, For them, this religiosity, for many of them, this religiosity is a constant, instant consumption of these packages. So certainly a very fancy New Age spiritual guru would come forward with a book, and in New Delhi's Connaught Place, you would see that it sells like a bestseller, like any other detective novel, How to Energize Your Mind. Now, here I feel like recalling the speech which, like you, at different moment of life, I read time and again. Krishnamurti's major turning point in life and the famous speech, The Pathless Land, which he delivered. Salvation doesn't lie outside. No guru, no organized sect, no temple, no mosque, no church, no organized religion can salvage me. I cannot buy it from someone. I can only be a consumer or a mad follower. But I have to work on myself. And truth is a pathless land. There is no instant, unilinear, straightforward formula to it. So it's an endless quest. It's a search. It's a quest. And no sect, no organized institution, no organized religion can take us to that. I invoke this speech time and again when I see ourselves surrounded either by a kind of religion which is based on orthodoxies, temples, politics, temple, mosque, churches, rituals, and another is this postmodern consumption of instant salvation capsules and packages. That it's a pathless land, it's a quest. We have to continually work on ourselves. And education is essentially about that art of working on oneself. So these three questions to me are interrelated. And these questions I raise as a student, as a teacher, as a wanderer. And I will just end, I began with the Tagore song. I will just end, and essentially I will end with that, because that really fascinating. Have you watched sunset? Do you see a leaf falling from the tree? Do you see the stars? Now when Krishnamurti asks children this question, it is such an important question to ask. As I'm saying again and again, it's not so-called idealistic utopian question of daydreaming. It is about education, about mindfulness, about real learning. I'll just tell, as it is a story, that beautiful novel Hermann Hesse wrote, Siddharth's Quest and the Search. Now Siddharth, as a wanderer, walking and coming near a river, and then he met a boatman, and he told the boatman that you have been ferrying people for years, you have seen this river. I want to talk to you. Boatman says, why? He says, I want to understand the river. I want to see the river. I want to observe the river. And the boatman was surprised. He says, for ages, I have seen people, they see river only as an obstacle to be overcome. So river should be through a bridge or through the boat. You cross the river, go to the other side, go to the market, to the bank, to the other places, to the worldly business. I have hardly seen anyone interested in the river. And then the boatman and Siddharth, for a couple of days, day and night, sat in front of the river. And such a beautifully Hermann Hesse describes. And then one day, the river to Siddharth begins to speak. River begins to speak in many languages. River begins to speak in many voices, in many languages. So, river becomes enchanted. River is alive. And there is a deep awakening on the part of Siddharth. That is what, in another context, what Thichnathan would say, that living here and now, right moment, with absolute mindfulness, without judging, without evaluating, and just to be with it, And then, for example, it began to tell another story, another sensitivity to life. So friends, that is it. As I have told you, that I am walking with my own feelings and the failures and ambiguities and contradictions, with all this spectrum of thoughts, ideas, and the elasticity of consciousness. Somebody asked me, one of my students once asked me, "Are you a follower of Marx?" I said no. "Are you a follower of Gandhi?" I said no. "Are you a follower of Rabindranath Tagore?" I said no. "Are you a follower of Jiddu Krishnamurti?" I said no. And Krishnamurti, like all of them, and especially Krishnamurti, would have felt extremely unhappy had I said I am his follower. Because Krishnamurti would repeatedly say that no, you did not be a follower, need not be, no guru. You and I are inquiring together, as Krishnamurti would say. So I am inquiring, wondering, reflecting, and you are patient enough to listen to these tales of confusion, ambiguity, and this ceaseless walking. And thank you very much. It's a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Pathak, for sharing this intense experience with us. You have talked with great passion and feeling, and it was wonderful to share this journey with you. I think we all feel what you have tried to communicate to us. So now it's a beautiful setting, and perhaps we can ask a few questions of Professor Pathak related to this talk. So we'll leave the floor open. There will be a mic. Please speak only into the mic.
Hi, Professor. Thanks for the talk. I'm just wondering, because you are so much impressed with the J. Krishnamurti, you must have talked to the administrators at the university about incorporating the talks or the wisdom of J. Krishnamurti into the curriculum. What was their response? Thanks.
No, thank you very much. That I think that there is no uniform answer to these questions. In my professional teaching career in the university, I have seen administrators, deans, rectors, vice chancellors of different kind, Of course, there were some who are extraordinarily experimental, open, dialogic, sensitivity, and trust the teacher, And also I have seen administrators who are not so sensitive, not so sensitive, and beyond the very stereotypical notion, they refuse to entertain any other idea. And particularly my worry is that at this juncture now, possibly most of the administrators who run our universities are becoming like that, You and I are intelligent enough to understand why I am saying that, so I need not elaborate it,
Yeah, good evening. It's me here, Preeti. A few years ago, you had written that we are living in a post-truth age. And just now you have quoted from Krishnamurti saying that truth is a pathless land. Can you somewhere throw light on what you had said about our living in a post-truth age?
I think that right now I don't recall the context or the where I wrote, but the thing is that, in an, at this moment, in this age, where constant dissemination, constant dissemination and bombardment of what otherwise is often being regarded as sensations, the fake news, the propaganda machinery, through WhatsApp, through messages, through constant disseminating, 24/7 toxic television channels and all that. It is exceedingly difficult. It is exceedingly difficult for young, vulnerable minds, unless they are lucky to find schools like Krishnamurti Foundation schools, to find good teachers and sensitive parents in the family. It is becoming exceedingly difficult for many of them, to see beyond that trap of post-truth, and to understand the world much more deeply, meaningfully, with lot of questions, lot of wonder, lot of reflections. So I think that's the added challenge today in the age of internet, in the age of propaganda machinery, in the age of constant quick dissemination of all sorts of information, news, propaganda. It is an exceedingly difficult challenge for the teacher, for the parent, and for the young learners, how we grow up and how we begin to think clearly, critically, with an inquiring spirit.
Good evening. This is Bhaskar Sheshadri. I feel more than a question, this as my own pain. You have been talking about this detoxing and deconditioning and other things. I have a very strong feeling in my mind that even without teachers, even without parents, there is a very strong conditioning which is unable to be extricated in life. This I feel very seriously disturbing the whole society, the whole universe. Not necessarily hello, not necessarily one has to get conditioned with a teacher, with parents, with friends, or any other gurus or teachers. There is a big problem in having the clarity in life without the conditioning, even without these outside elements. And number two, when it comes to inquiring all these things with all seriousness, permit me to say that seriousness. At some point of time, I read one book, I just come across one particular person and I am inspired a lot. Then sometime later, I go to somebody else. Like this, my travel has been with many people in various formats, in various spectrum of life. At one particular stage, I feel that I lost my identity in this whole process of inquiry. Where I am in this. At the same time, my original problem, which is really disturbing me a lot, is I am under the impression that I am inquiring in my life with all kinds of these things, with all my seriousness. But honestly, to say the fact, I am undergoing a chattering within me, and it is not really an inquiry. Can you just give some painkiller for me? Sorry to ask this word, use this word. Thank you.
No, I think it's a very authentic and brilliant inquiry and questions. Frankly speaking, I too have no answer to this question, but I think that with empathy, I can understand what you are passing through. Now, I don't know, but I believe that is it possible to have an inquiring mind and at the same time a calm mind? Or is it that a mind that is perpetually inquiring is all the time agitated, restless? Or is it that it is possible to have calmness and at the same time wondering, reflecting, questioning, and working? Right now, I won't be able to answer it in terms of yes, no, but I think that let us meditate on that question. Let us reflect on that question. That is the only thing I could say.
Einstein used to say that he's standing on the shoulder of giants, right? Similarly, we are also standing in the world shoulder of giants. Aurobindo, Upanishads, Ramana Maharshi, you name it, right? And that gives us an enormous support, strength, and sort of a fulcrum to stand on. Question is, at what point do you stand on the shoulder? At what point do you find your own wings and find your own path? And what stage in life you do too early, you're not doing justice to your family duties. Too late, life might be gone. So where do you kind of draw those critical decision points?
Yeah, it's a lovely question and a very critical question. The first part of it, I tend to feel that what Einstein said, which is so true. Now, for example, all of us, the huge body of knowledge and the realization is there. We get shaped by that, influenced by that. But one thing which I feel is very important, that suppose I won't say that when Krishnamurti is saying that no organized sect, no religion, no guru can take you, it is your quest, you are the light. That does not mean, and that should not mean, that you do not read Buddha, or you do not read Jesus Christ, or you do not read the Upanishads. Now, but what is important, I think, is that, for instance, I myself read a great deal about Jalaluddin Rumi, about Upanishads, the Buddha, Christ, Krishnamurti. But the thing that I think Krishnamurti is asking us is that I will continue to exist as a mechanized parrot, only quoting books, quoting mantras, unless I realize it, feel it. And that, a book can be enabling. I listened to a lecture by Alan Watts, it could be enabling, but then the journey, Alan Watts or Jiddu Krishnamurti cannot walk with me. That is, I have to walk, and this is where I believe that, for example, now we are so fond of quoting, Walt Whitman. When almost like an Upanishadic sage, he says, to me, every inch of space is a miracle. To me, this grass is a miracle, that leaf is a miracle, that star is a miracle. The fishes swimming into the river is a miracle. Now, it's not just a grammatically correct English sentence. There's a deep realization of it. Or William Blake saying, handful of grain and I see eternity in it. Now a tiny blue flower blooming and you see what Tagore would say, the merger of the finite and the infinite. In that flower, the entire universe is there. Now that, I think, if I only quote it, only to get a clapping from my students. But I do not realize it. I do not pass through it. I do not experience it. Then the light is not me. I'm borrowing. I'm borrowing books, borrowing ideas. And I think this is where it is so important. Great books always play, great spiritual texts always play an enabling role. But then I am not a tape recorder. I am not a parrot unless I experience it, realize it, and for that, see that, inquire into it, pass through that, it does not have much meaning. So it would be, and that's why at the very beginning I said, sometimes I feel, at times to me it looks, I'm just academically writing another footnote referring to Krishnamurti. But have I really understood it? Is it inside me? Have I really realized it? I gave the example of the fear of death. The fear, the thought, time, the memory. Now, but I think that is where the inquiry, the spirit, the journey, and if you ask me, I am in that state of journey. I am in that state of journey. Confused, falling, rising, walking, getting depressed, again getting the light. So it is this journey. It is this journey I'm talking about.
First of all, thank you for that beautiful poetry which you started with. I think it was Akash Bhora Shurjo Tara that you made. Yeah. So I'll set a bit of context, personal context to my question. So I do a lot of teaching. I teach music. So when I teach, there are many times when children, when they come with their parents, one of the things which they say is, can you get my child ready for such and such super singer contest? They're not bothered about what the child would learn as far as music, how the engagement with music is, but this super singer contest, that contest, this contest. Now, I have tried my best in explaining to them how the engagement is important, the query is important, the learning is important, and not really going and participating in the competition. And I must say that there have been many instances where they have just walked away, right? So apart from the fact that I feel that my conscience is clear, that I have made an effort, the end result has really not changed. They have continued. There must be somebody else out there, another teacher like me, who would be willing to put them onto these stages. So what have we achieved collectively? There has really been no change. That child will probably give in to these aspirations of the parents and move on to a very, very highly competitive musical space.
I absolutely agree with you, see your point, but only thing that I feel like saying, I know it is exceedingly difficult, we all pass through it, and at times it is a sense of pessimism, it is a sense of despair, but I think that in a different context, I will borrow that expression. From Mussolini's prison, that creative thinker Antonio Gramsci was writing his notes, and one expression he used, so beautiful, he says, beyond the pessimism of the intellect and celebrating the optimism of the will, So I think that many occasions, you and I are caught into that, So I think that even if it happens, next morning in your class, you find another student, another parent, you tell what you feel is the light, the illuminating. The flower is blooming here right now. It is my problem if I fail to notice it. But for that reason, I cannot say that the flower is not blooming. I'll just give you an illustration the way it has damaged us in order to. In Uttarakhand, about 9,000 feet altitude, one Himalayan hamlet. One evening, and Nanda Devi, Panchachuli, Trishul, these majestic Himalayan peaks, and afternoon there was sunset. An amazing sunset. It's like Bismillah Shehnai, you know. That sunset is so beautiful, so amazing. But suddenly after some time you realize there are a lot of young tourists from Gurgaon. There is an amazing sunset, but they were there. They were busy with Momo and Maggie and with the loud music. The divine came and they disappeared. And they were consuming Momo and Maggie. You know. But the fact is that it is there. But the fact is that it is there. So, and possibly someone is seeing it, feeling it. You know. That's the optimism of the will. And that might give us some strength to resist the pessimism of the intellect.
Avijit, I'd like to ask one
Yeah,
question.
please.
How do you yourself cope with this propaganda machine that you talked about? In today's world, there is such a strong current of propaganda that students are hearing all the time. And they're going to be swallowing it and maybe repeating it. What has been your experience of confronting beliefs of that kind in a classroom? If you try to make that attempt, what is the response? How do students look at that, university students?
I think, Shailesh, over the years, I just retired recently, but before that, in that entire process, over the years, and particularly the last phase, and I think that Meenakshi also would agree, that the last phase, last 9-10 years, things are more challenging, things are more difficult. But nevertheless, you would find a mixed audience of students, mixed group of students. Some are very sensitive, eagerly inquiring, exploring, examining, re-examining. And there are some who are already terribly conditioned. And I won't say that they are only conditioned by certain kind of right-wing nationalist ideology. Many of them are conditioned even by some kind of progressive ideology. So, I would often see in the classroom that a student who loves Ambedkar would refuse to hear anything positive about Gandhi. So he would always see in terms of the binaries, Ambedkar versus Gandhi on the caste questions. Or a student who is a Marxist would refuse to engage very meaningfully with, say, people like Jiddu Krishnamurti and others. And I always, when I used to engage with them, one thing I always used to tell, and again, to talk about that pathless land, and I used to give an analogy, and it used to work at times, and times it used to fail. That analogy is that I used to tell that let us, for a second, meditate and think that you and I, teacher, student, all are walking through a deep, dense forest, full of magnificent trees, beautiful trees. Here is a tree called Tolstoy. Here is a tree called Dostoevsky. Here is a tree Jiddu Krishnamurti. Here is a tree Marx. Here is a tree Gandhi. So I tell that, but the forest is much more. So you have to come to the forest, come under a tree, feel the tree mindfully, sit under the Tolstoy tree, feel, observe minutely. Then after some time you just walk. Another tree is waiting. You sit under the tree. You are young, 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, 19 years. This is not the time to arrive at the final conclusion that I am an Ambedkarite and I have defined the world. I am a Marxist, I have defined the world. This is the time of walking through that pathless land and through that forest. At times it used to work. At times a Marxist student would come and say, "Sir, I began to read Tolstoy carefully." An Ambedkarite would say that, "No, I read Gandhi's Hind Swaraj again. Gandhi is not as bad as I thought." Now I think this is a journey that I could say this is a constant journey. And you also run the risk of being leveled time and again. And one of the dangerous level, as I say, is that, oh, here is an idealist. So that's what of abuse, so utopian, idealist, But I think that's the way it is. It goes on.
Thanks for this very wonderful speech, Professor. I have a question about, you just mentioned some time before about the situation that exists in the country and the divisions that are there between caste and religion, and how thoughts and ideas or the conditioning of the mind is actually the reason for those things, and the need to bring mindfulness to the current moment to be able to look at it, look at the truth of it. While that exists on one end, then the actual practical life where you do need those thoughts and the conditioning of who you are to lead a life, to perform your job, or to plan for something where thought is needed to do something, where you do need the conditioning. My personal conflict is, how do you selectively condition or decondition this to be able to lead a life? And I would...
No, brilliant question. I don't think I have an answer to this. That only the other day I was listening to one talk or in the conversation where Krishnamurti was saying about this very mechanized 9-to-5 work, and he said that, that I would rather die, but I would not engage myself in that drilling. 30 years, 40 years of life, 9-to-5 drilling. Now, I think that he said that, and he was very sincere about it. He said that and it's mechanization and all that. We become like a robotic performance. But the question, where your question acquires special relevance, is that many of us, with all our sensitivity in our everyday world, are engaged with many issues, the survival issues, the physical survival issues, the other issues. So we do work. And when we go outside work, that is not necessarily the celebration of freedom. That is lot of conditioning, lot of drilling and other goes on. Now it's a genuine real life dilemma. I tend to feel that approach to that question is possible. Some meaningful answer to that question is possible when collectively we become more dialogic, and if you allow me to use that word, we integrate the political economy and our deeper quest, and how we could integrate the two. And as a result, as Krishnamurti said in that did you fight collectively for that monster, that drilling, that machine, 9 to 5? Did we fight collectively for that? So I think that fight for collectivity is also a larger politico-economic fight, creating a new kind of work environment, new kind of economy. And I think that is where this is a very difficult question to answer. And especially you think that when suddenly Mr. Murthy from ex-Infosys chief, when he says that 70 hours in a week, and imagine in a city like Bangalore, 2 hours and 2 hours, 4 hours every day commuting. What does it mean? 70 hours plus every day 4 hours commuting. We are not just machines, economic machine. We are not the fetish in the machine of the growth rate. We are human. We are wanderer. We are seeker. We are not just products. But the confidence with which he spoke and the way he treated it, it came out of an understanding of the world, of the work, of the economy, which is very corrupt, which is very violent, which is very instrumental and aggressive. So I think possibly I tend to say that answer to that question in that many would march. Krishnamurti, Marx, Gandhi, many would march, in order to respond to that question. And that was the point I was trying to say, that not a specific school of thought, but be dialogic enough, be open enough, constantly exploring, which Krishnamurti himself did. That is the way I would like to respond.
Good evening, Professor. I'm Karthik. First of all, I'd like to share with our friend that I think you have already passed on some painkillers. I think the flower is already blooming. I think there's enough hope, I think, all around us, and optimism that I think, we can look at. But I think one of the questions that I have is, and please, friends, correct me if I'm wrong, Krishnamurti himself has actually defended, when he's talking about the schools, the KFI type of schools, as being exclusive, right? Exclusive in the context of, people who are looking to be unconditional. I may be not explaining or characterizing it the same way, but that's where I look to, get your opinion or thoughts, is when you come across conditioned minds in your journey, I'm sure across the various social roles that you may have played, not only as a professor, but across as a relative, as a friend, as a father, as everybody else. At what point have you stopped offering your thoughts, or is that something that you do, basically saying this is too conditioned for me to even try, or have you always tried your part to try and unlearn, or explain to them the true nature of where you feel they are? Because I feel like until I got to the understanding of Krishnamurti, that was completely new to me. When I up until that point, I've not really thought about those things in that sense, and that could be attributed towards to a starting of sensitivity, being more sensitive, if I may characterize it that way. So my question again is, at what point do you say I need to stop here because it's probably not worthwhile, or have you always attempted to move that conversation forward in your social interactions? And I'm sure, like with the academic exposure as well, I think that only extends that opportunity.
I understand it, but I'll just say, since time is limited, I'll say that which sound is most beautiful? The sound of silence. So there are moments be silent. When this question, the issues that you were talking about, possibly, silence. And silence is a matter of intense activity. Silence requires intense life energy and concentration. And that silence possibly takes us to that realm, and words are constantly deceiving us. Words are incapable. Words, ideas, books, ideologies are deceiving us, and that silence takes us to that. And that silence might have immense radiating power when someone experiences that silence. Sometimes the photograph, even that photograph I am seeing, just look at Raman Maharshi, his eyes, and the profound silence. That possibly speaks a great deal than 1,000 volumes of his writing, So words often fail, but at the same time, we are earthly beings. We need words to speak, to articulate our point, but there are limit to words. Limit to words. So my answer to your question cannot be explained through words. That is the way I'd say.
Maybe we'll bring the evening to a close now. Before I thank Professor Pathak, I want to just make an announcement on behalf of the KFI, which is that recently a new, which is available on mobile phones, has been released, which has been called the Awakening of Intelligence. And it is essentially an app which is a doorway into the entire work of Krishnamurti, all his talks, question and answer sessions, the dialogues that he has had with various individuals, and so on. It is available both on the Android platform and for the iOS platform. And if you look in the Google Play Store and the App Store, the Apple App Store, you will find it available there, the Awakening of Intelligence. So you'll find it's essentially the actual work of Krishnamurti, no commentaries by other authors and so on. So those of you who are interested, please do access that app. It's a tremendously useful instrument to have available at our fingertips. So I'd like now to thank you, Professor Pathak. It's been very nice, really. You have talked with great feeling, great intensity. I think everyone here was able to sense that urgency and intensity that you brought to the questions you took up. And it is a time perhaps which requires that kind of urgency and intensity when we look at what's happening in the world around. I think anyone who has followed your career will know that you have been walking down this path for many decades now, and I am happy that we have got the occasion to listen to you. So I hope we will meet again in similar circumstances. Thank you very much for your talk.